about it. Go ahead.
I got this pizza at a place called More's, which is here in Malibu. And they have a sign in front that says something like the world's best pizza. And I thought, well, if it's the world's best pizza, I had to try it. And it was incredibly good and is incredibly good. And it's stunningly good. It's just beyond belief good. More's pizza. I strongly recommend it.
And on that note, I want to welcome everybody. On that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world according to Ben Stein. If you guys could let me get through one intro, that would be nice. I'll never get through an intro without being interrupted, but I've come to accept that. And that is the world according to Ben Stein. And on that note, let's welcome back, as always, from 93.1 WIBC, BAM, the future of conservative talk radio. And of course, from the Media Action Network, who's got a great petition that everybody should be signing right now. I did an interview on the air with it right now, a couple days ago with Rob Kendall from WIBC. And I did an interview about the petition. I think everybody should go sign it. And Ken, please tell people where they could sign that.
It is at www.mediaactionnetwork.com.
And tell people exactly what Media Action Network is in one sentence.
We don't like the liberal media, and you don't either. Join us, and we're a way to help fight back. 2 sentences.
It's a great way of summing it up. And of course, this show wouldn't be complete without America's humble servant, lawyer, actor, provocateur, father, saint, sinner, America's teacher, and of course, Dr. Benjamin Jeremy Stein. Welcome, sir.
You're very kind, sir. And I actually am having late office hours tonight, and I can see people quite late, but I do not accept any insurance.
It's cash money only.
Right.
And very smart in this day and age to not take insurance. But let's get right to it, because
and you were looking very priestly today, Mr. Friedman.
I do my best. That's what they call me, the Reverend. But I want to get to this right away. And Ben brings this up all the time. He's brought it up for years. Every weekend in Chicago, every weekend in the inner cities, we have mass murder going. Every single weekend in these cities. Yesterday, or a few days ago, obviously in Minneapolis, there was another police shooting, and Ben Stein, we still don't know the full what happened, but we know one thing: police bad, guy with arrest warrant that was running from the scene with his car, American hero and icon now. What say you, Ben Stein?
I say that Black Lives Matter epitomizes everything that's wrong with America right now, because it is founded on a fundamental lie, which is that the police are murdering Black people and there's a genocide against Black people by the police, when in fact there is no genocide against Black people. And if there were, and God forbid that there ever would be, because they're fine people, it would be being done by the Black people themselves. There are incredible numbers of Black people killed by other Black people every weekend in, as you said, Judah, so aptly, in the inner cities of America. Nowadays, I'm sorry to say, it's in some of the suburbs of America as well. And nobody gives a damn about those poor souls. Their mothers, their children, their grandmothers, their grandfathers, nobody gives a damn about those poor souls. But you and I do, and we on this show do, and the Republican Party does. But if a policeman, in a legitimate but confused, very confused use of police power, shoots a man who does the exact thing you're not supposed to do, which is run away from the police, the precise thing that no one of any race is supposed to ever do, and he gets shot and killed, which is really sad. We do not want him getting shot, let alone being killed. That man becomes a symbol of racism and fascism in America, and it is a very, very sad day for America that this has happened. And it is a very sad day that the media does not report on this astonishing inconsistency.
See, let's go to you, Ken LaCourte. You brought this up before, what you do immediately when you're pulled over by the police. But let's say you did have an expired tag. let's say you did have an arrest warrant out for you. Ken LaCourt gets pulled over and decides to drive away in his car. You could almost guess the same exact reaction might happen by the police.
I just pull a gun out first. Be like, hey, you can't pull me over.
And you're like, is this what the warrant was for?
Well,
That was a joke.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ken. I'm begging.
No, I was done. Just wanted to make sure you know I was joking.
No, but I do think it is astonishing that this weekend genocide by blacks against blacks goes virtually unnoticed in the media of the United States of America, while the smallest, and no police shooting of any person is small, but a much lesser number of deaths caused by the police trying to maintain order, not trying to sell drugs, it becomes a gigantic, enormous event. What is wrong with us here in America that we tackle the police who are out trying to save lives and exalt the gangs and the gangsters who are trying to take lives? It just blows my mind away. I'm here at my house and I have just a few feet away from me a disc player. I'm old, so I have disc players. I actually have quite a few 33 RPMs, and I could play this Dr. Dre song album, which is all about black people killing other black people, and somehow that's become romantic and wonderful. Whereas when the police kill someone, which they should not do, absolutely, that is an astonishing proof of America's innate fascism and racism.
Rob, he brings up a great point. I challenge anybody to name one of the innocents that was killed last weekend in Chicago, or I'll go even further than last weekend. I'll ask every American if they can name, other than the family members of one person that's been killed in the last month in Chicago,
or the last year in Chicago,
or the last year, Rob.
So we talked about this on the air today, and one of the great tragedies out of all of this is this perception that like the police are running around looking for people to kill. Police, it's pretty simple. They want to ignore you. They want to leave you alone. They don't want to deal with you. Don't give them a reason to deal with you. Police officers are heroes. This woman in question has an impeccable record as a police officer, and we're led to believe that after 25 years on the job, she just suddenly became a raging racist who was looking to kill.
She didn't go rogue, she went racist.
I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And the problem is, and we've seen this here in Indianapolis the past year, officers who are eligible to retire, who still had a lot of good years left to give, said, I'm done. The ones that are in their prime say, I'm going to suburban police departments where I'll make less money, but I don't have to deal with this crap. And now people who are uniquely qualified to be big city law enforcement officers to keep people safe don't want to deal with it, and you get unqualified people in charge, which makes it worse.
Yeah, there'll be movies made about that, and the villains will, of course, be white businessmen who somehow are leading the whole horrible chain of events.
Look, I think you have a whole community you have a whole community who looks at themselves and they look at their surroundings and they don't understand why the things that they're seeing. Go into any black community, you're going to be locking your doors. You're not going to be jumping out and going to the rib joints. I mean, most, not all, most black communities have a lot of extra problems, from drug abuse to single parenthood, heavy drugs, heavy crime, lots of issues. And I think it's natural for them, and it's certainly natural for the politicians to say, let's blame somebody, right? You don't get elected by saying, hey, let's fix this and everybody pick up a shovel. You get elected by saying it's those guys over there. I think you combine that with some rough policing, not shooting, but I think attitudinally in certain communities. And all of a sudden they're trying to figure out, why are we poor and why do our neighborhoods have so many problems and the white neighborhoods don't? And that's a fair question to ask. I think that everybody's coming to the wrong solutions. And the wrong solution is, well, because it's institutional racism, which if you swapped with historical racism, I'd actually buy, but there is no heavy institutional racism against Black people in America. I mean, there are no institutions that are inherently racist or that practice those types of policies. That just doesn't happen anymore. But we do have systems and cultures within our culture that perpetuate themselves down through the years. And it is hard for them to turn that around. And unfortunately, I think the things that they're looking at doing, saying, oh, we've now elevated BLM as our spokesperson, so we need fewer cops, that is the 180 wrong thing to do. And that's
you bring up a great point. And I just want to say that Ben and I, we both live in Los Angeles, and I've had a mixed bag of experience with police officers. You just reminded me of a story. This happened about 16 years ago. I was smoking. I chucked my cigarette out of the car. All of a sudden I heard, "Sir, you are not allowed to litter on the street. Please get out of your car and pick up your cigarette butt." And I'm like in my car shaking. I'm like, is he being like, how am I gonna be able to find the right cigarette butt? And I just remembered that experience. I was like, really? You're making me get out of my car? There's tons of crime going on, and I got to get out of my car. But I did. I got out of the car shaking, because that's what most normal people do when confronted by police, but demure. And Ben Stein, I mean, we've discussed this in the past, that all of us have been pulled over in different states. And it's scary, but we put our hands on the steering wheel and we wait for that knock on the window, and we do what the police tell us to do.
Well, for my own bad self, the last time I was pulled over was in Palm Desert, which is near our home in Rancho Mirage, which is out in the desert. And I was for an expired license plate. And the policeman just approached my car and said, "Oh my God, you're Ben Stein. I love you and Ferris Bueller." And he said, "Go away. We're not going to bother with you." So that does not happen to everyone. But let me just say, anybody who resists police orders and resists, especially the very basic order, "Don't run away and keep your hands in plain view," is asking for violent trouble. Why would anyone do that unless he or she is high, unless he or she wanted to cause some trouble and commit a crime? Why would anyone do that? Nobody is that stupid. So why would anyone do that? They have to be doing it in order to be fulfilling some prophecy by some professor at some college that the police are going to kill him or hurt him in some way, and therefore he has to run away. So I think, yes, Black people are unfortunately doing things that unfortunately do sometimes get them shot, which is a terrible thing. Every time it happens, it's a terrible thing. But why is it possible for them to learn almost any kind of basketball maneuver, almost any kind of dance step, and not learn not to dance away when the police come up and say, "Don't move"?
Well, on that note, Rob, very interesting point, Ben, of course. Rob, what are your callers saying? Because I'm always curious what people are saying to you on the air about a situation like this.
So in Indianapolis, we had record number of homicides again. I think 3 out of the last 4 years, we've had record numbers of homicides in the city, well over 200 homicides. The vast majority are African-American on African-American violence. And yet there's not a peep about that, solving that issue. What was interesting was last year, Indianapolis made national news when this young man named Deshaun Reed was shot by police officers. He was African-American, but he was shot by African-American police officers. And this investigation, crystal clear, to the credit of the special prosecutor brought in, they spent months putting this together. It's very clear he shot at the cops. He shot at them first. He was trying to kill them. But yet people were freaking out like, oh my gosh, there could be riots. It's riots about what? It was Black officer, Black suspect. The cops are cleared definitively. They had an hours-long press conference taking people through step by step by step. It was like the Zapruder film. And yet people are still worried about rioting. And it's like the officers acted appropriately. It was African-American and African-American. People just want to hate cops in many cases right now.
I think people, you raised a great point.
Why is that?
I think people just want to hate.
Oh,
and on that note,
that's really good. That's really good.
And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to that man, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody in our YouTube chat. Obviously, we are reading your messages, and I want to thank everybody for downloading the podcast in mass numbers. The World According to Ben Stein on Apple, wherever podcasts are, you can download them. They're, of course, free. And we're joined tonight by Ken LaCourt from Media Action
We
Network.
love Ken LaCourt.
We do love Ken LaCourt. And, of course, Rob Kendall from 93.1 WIBC. Bam, the future of conservative talk radio. And I've gotten quite a few questions, Rob, about people asking if you've been in politics, which I responded yes, and people insisting that you get back into politics. But I want to get to the question that I want to ask all of you guys that we posed on Facebook. When and how did looting, rioting, and the burning down of establishments, attacks on the police and their stations become an acceptable and encouraged form of collateral damage? Let's call it what it truly is, right? Domestic terrorism, Ben.
I think we should call it what it is, which is attempted murder. I mean, it's if you burn down a police station, you're trying to kill the people inside. Some of them are police, and they're fine people. Some of them are suspects, and are probably there because they have committed a crime and are awaiting some kind of judicial process. In any event, burning down a police station is the absolute opposite of any kind of decent legal system, and exactly what should not be happening in the United States of America. It's the exact opposite of what the United States of America is for, which is to allow people to have legal rights and legal abilities to stand up for themselves in court. It's the exact opposite of anything except Nazism.
Unless they tax our tea.
Say that again?
I said, unless they tax our tea. I'm just saying we have a little bit of a history of this.
Yeah, we do have a history. You're right. We do have a history of standing up, but we don't have a history of burning down targets. Right now we do. We don't have a history of burning down local businesses, which we all know the irony that these are the places where the community shops getting burnt down.
Crazy.
There's a certain point, and Ben can speak to this, or anybody can speak to this. Listen, we live in California, right? If you live off the beach like some do, it's harder to get certain types of insurance. If you live in Florida, the same thing. Or if you live where earthquakes are, you can't a harder time getting earthquake insurance. There are going to be certain neighborhoods where it's going to be like impossible to get looting, and people aren't going to be able to get insurance.
There's a real reason why when you go into a poor neighborhood, you go into a grocery stores there, and things are more expensive than in nicer neighborhoods. That always seemed like a regressive tax, and it is. But it's because, hey, if you burn down Ralph's every 25 years, there's an extra cost to doing some business there.
If you burn down any store, if you burn down anything, there's an extra cost. And there's an extra gigantic social cost, which is the cost of fear. We're living in a society where people are afraid. I mean, I'm, as I always say on the show, and I wish it weren't true, but it is, I'm by far the oldest of all the panelists. And I've seen lots of this going on over the years, but I think it's getting worse and worse. There is just too much fear in America right now. And America is not supposed to be the land of fear. We're supposed to be the land of opportunity. And I keep thinking, if I may make a slight diversion here, please. I keep thinking about this. We are America, land of opportunity. Is it Neil Diamond who sings that song? Someone's only in America, land of opportunity. It's great song. But anyway, I keep saying to myself, okay, all these people lining up at the border, creeping under the fences, creeping over the fences, creeping through rivers. Why are they coming here? Because it's the land of opportunity. All over the world, they want to come here, everywhere. Why, if it's so terrible here, why, if this is a fascist dictatorship, a fascist racist dictatorship, why are all these people coming here? So but no, it's because America is a bright, shining magnet of opportunity and prosperity and legal rights. That's why people want to come here. Why then don't we say, why don't the media say, why are these people rioting? They're living in the best place in the world. They have more chances and more opportunities in America than they do anywhere else in the world. Why are they rioting? Why are they looting? And I keep thinking of something else. A reporter for the Washington Post a great newspaper for which I used to write long ago.
A past great
newspaper. Formerly great newspaper.
Formerly.
You wouldn't let me finish. But when it was a great newspaper, I used to work with them long ago when it was a great newspaper in a very, very, very trivial capacity. And I often think to myself, why didn't they report endlessly how great life in America was every day? Well, and sometimes they did, and that was when they were at their best, when they were reporting about how great things were in America. I don't understand why it is that we have a whole world, 7.6 trillion people, billion people, and they almost all seem to want to come to America. If America is so terrible as Black Lives Matter says, if America is as terrible as the transgender people say, why does everyone want to come here? And why will people riot and burn down the cities that are the center of the greatness of America? What kind of craziness is going on?
Well, it used to be, you raise a great point, Rob. You raise a great point where if it used to bleed, it leads, right? But now it's the encouraging of fear. That's what sells, right? The encouragement of absolute fear on a daily, hourly basis by these networks is that's their leading story. And they are encouraging the fear, they are encouraging the looting, they are encouraging the riots. And Rob, like you shared that story with the police office with that crazy guy, Malik Muhammad, whatever his name is, even in your state, they're encouraging this type of stuff.
Yeah, and this is a government story, but I think it applies to what's going on with what we're talking about here. When I worked for Pence, when he was governor, or under Pence, as the state pharmacy board director, I went in there knowing the Mike Pence of speeches, great speeches in Congress, appearances on Fox News and CNN. And you think, man, this guy, you're going to go in and work for this guy because I believe that he believes in government reform, right? Or the people around him believe in government reform, that, we're going to storm the Bastille, that we're going to make it better. And you get in there and you quickly realize, nah, not really. The hamster needs to stay on the wheel, because the hamster staying on the wheel means people keep getting paid, the donors and lobbyists keep getting rewarded, and people keep getting elected. And I think that's sort of the same thing here. They need chaos. These media organizations need chaos and calamity because they need the hamster to stay on the wheel, because that's how they get eyeballs. That's how they sell newspapers. And so I think they have a vested interest in calamity and chaos.
I think you're exactly right. Jeff, can you make me some more tea, please? That's
Rob, Ken, he raised a great point about the media narrative and all this. And somebody brought up Rodney King, and it used to be that you used to be able to pick things, right? Oh, do you remember the Rodney King thing? How crazy out of control that got? Or being from New York, the Crown Heights riots, right? We were able to pick one or two. Now we're able to pick, in the last year and a half to 2 years, Ken, 100 things that have gotten burned down, 100 different looting events.
Well, look, we had all summer where the media was not so subtly encouraging this. We had all summer where every elected Democrat in the country couldn't find a riot anywhere. That, a lot of that was kind of like we're letting Trump's America burn summer of last year. I don't think that we will see as much coming out like this because there's less of a vested interest to do it in. But of course, Robert's right. It's like the media always has an incentive to kind of hype up and scare you out of something. I mean, that's how they get people tuning in.
So my question is,
they will find Trump fascist moles left over in the police departments and in the FBI and the CIA. They will find that, like Werewolf, the organization of former SS people in Germany after World War II, there's going to be a sort of werewolf in America of former Trump people who are going to be there perpetuating racism. They're going to find them.
My question, though, is there anybody on the left that has enough guts to come out? Is there anybody that has enough courage to come out and say, this is wrong? Let's get back full circle to what we were discussing in Chicago. And if Fox were smart, Ken, in my humble opinion, and I think one of them was doing this, I think Hannity at a point was doing this, they would start naming the names of everybody killed in the inner cities every weekend. And, you know, it might not go over great with some circles, but that would be very poignant if they actually did do something like that.
And their families and
Yeah.
their children and their parents and how they got killed for nothing, for absolutely nothing. How people just got in a car with a gun and started driving around and shooting. And how, by the way, that was the initiation ceremony for various gangs, is you had to kill some innocent person to show that you're a loyal gang member. That is ignored. I mean, no, I don't think anyone has been able to even remotely show that any police department in America says, as an initiation ceremony, to be part of this police department, you have to go out and kill 5 African American people. Nobody has said that. But we know that there are gangs in America where they say you have to go kill 5 people in such and such a neighborhood because that neighborhood is dominated by our rivals in order for you to be accepted in our gang.
Ken, it's a great point, Ben, but Ken, you run a great site, LaCourte News. Everybody should be getting this every day. And of course, the Media Action Network. Don't you think it would be an interesting piece every weekend if we knew the names of those that have been slaughtered in our country for
Look, it gets
nothing?
boring. I'll be honest, it gets boring. Because I saw the left do this before. They didn't do it for that. They did it for everybody who died in George Bush's war in Iraq. And I remember them printing that up and making a big deal. Look, we all like to choose our own victims. I mean, Hannity had victims from Chop up on Hannity. And I tell you, a lot of my conservative friends, when a bunch of nutballs were overrunning the Capitol, you know, a lot of our guys were like, well, but you got to understand, they were encouraged to, there was no guns, they just had sticks. You know, we all have a tendency to fall into our political things like that. I tell you, though, it's an interesting concept, and one newspaper did it. It was probably in the 90s. The Washington Times said, we are going to do a blurb and send a reporter to every single murder in Washington, D.C. Now, of course, 90% of those were in Southeast. And a friend of mine who was the managing editor of Fox News worked on that as a reporter, and literally every day they went there. And I said, what was it all about? What was it? He was like, 90% of them were drug deals or related to that. That was the vast, overwhelming majority of those, with gang violence thrown in on top of that.
And Ken, by the way, nobody's saying that it was stupid what happened at the Capitol, but we're saying, put in perspective of what's gone on in this country for the last year.
Saying that half of my conservative friends sounded like defense attorneys. When all summer they sounded like prosecutors, and now we're back to prosecutors again. And I'm okay with the prosecutors.
I'm just saying, Ken, when you put it in perspective over all the of what's gone on the last 2 years, and that day when we still don't know how the woman was shot and killed, or why she was shot and killed. Well, we don't even know how the police officer died, for God's sake, when we know nothing, no events of that day have really been investigated. Just a coincidence, but they haven't. And I agree with you, it was stupidity that day, but not the stupidity that we're seeing, or the scariness that we're seeing. They barbed wired Washington, D.C. Is Minnesota next, Ben Stein? Is that what we have to do for our safety?
I don't think that we're going to get any safety out of it, because no matter what the hard wiring shows in terms of violence in Minneapolis, there's still going to be violence there, because the media is going to excuse it. The media is going to give them a hall pass and let them go back to their homeroom and let them come out again and kill somebody else the next time around. We live in a world where the media is the judge, jury, and prosecutor and guard, and they are not going to hold these rioters, killers, arsonists, looters to account. That's the sad, incredibly sad truth. And by the way, let me add, there is so much. I, your humble servant, have had the pleasure over the last many, many years of being friends with a woman who was the sex crimes prosecutor for the city of Manhattan, the borough of Manhattan in New York City. And the story she told about how much rape there is in the non-white community of non-white women by non-white men, are especially gang-related, are so harrowing and so enormous in size, but nobody ever talks about them. Nobody talks about them at all. They might as well not be happening. The women's rights movement, and believe me, I'm 100% for the women's rights movement. I think women's rights is a giant issue still that hasn't been adequately addressed. But nobody is holding the people in the gangs responsible for any of the rapes that take place in the ghetto neighborhoods all the time. The people who do them just get away with them and go on with their lives, and the media doesn't give a crap.
You raise a great point, right? Because when I say collateral damage, right, they're saying because this happened, we're allowed to go and do this, and the media is okay with that. Imagine if the media, if somebody came out and said, you know, that woman deserved to be raped because what she was wearing. It's the same exact sort of logic, Rob.
Sure. My dear friend Judah, they do say that.
That's exactly what they're saying. What I'm saying is, imagine if somebody said that about a woman. No woman deserves to be raped because of what she's wearing, and no store, Rob, or community deserves to be destroyed because of because this doesn't always lead to that.
Ben, I have a weird question for you, but I think this will be an interesting answer, if it's all right if I ask you. I'm just doing math in my head. You were probably 3 or 4 years older than I am now when you did Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Did you think it was 1985 or 6, and I was born in 1944, so I was probably 38, I think. Well,
yeah. Okay, so I'm 37, so close. Did you think in this amount of time, which is a relatively short amount of time in terms of the history of the country, et cetera, you would see such a rapid decline in the way that people in elected office and people in the media treat law enforcement and law and order? Did you think you would see that?
I didn't. Well, let me just say, there were such things as film noir movies in the late 40s and early 50s into the mid 50s, in which the policemen were corrupt and dirty and violent. That existed, but not on television. That existed in the movies. On television, the policemen were always the heroes, always the good guys, and they were not turned upside down and made into the villains and the thugs and the racists. I don't know what did turn them upside down, but I know that it did happen. And your humble servant, me, I wrote a book called The View from Sunset Boulevard. I won't make any money by mentioning it. It's long since out of print. About the
great book.
Image. Thank you. About the images of America as shown on television. And they are images of people who hate America, who hate all the institutions of America. They're not going to come onto your boat, Ken, and arrest you unless you maybe you're much richer than I think. But if you're rich, maybe they will come and get you. But the media will go after you if you have any money, if you have any authority, if you have any prestige. If you're a member of a country club, the media will go after you if they possibly can.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's in the chat. We are reading it. I want to thank everybody for downloading the podcast. And of course, remind you to get Ben's newsletter, benstein.substack.com. It comes out 3 times a week. I love reading it. Ken LaCourte for Media Action Network. My mother, I'm on the phone with her today. You're in her top 3 of favorite people on.
Hey.
And you might be too, Rob. I don't want to offend other people and have them guessing. But she said to me, and now I'm getting his emails. And I said, you could unsubscribe. And she said, I don't want to unsubscribe. I love the stuff he sends out. So there you go, Ken. That's from my mother in New Jersey. So she loves what you send out. And I couldn't make up a story like that. But I want to get to something, and I want to get to Ken first on this, because remember when the vaccinations were becoming were going to become a possibility, everybody was like Kamala Harris, everybody was like, don't trust the vaccines, this and that, because it was the Trump vaccine, and somehow he was going to make the FDA give approval. He was going to he was going to do a shortcut to get out of the lockout. And now all of a sudden, everybody get vaccinated. Joe Biden's running the greatest vaccine ship. It's a horrible ship. But Ken, you said you were waiting. I don't know if you got the Johnson & Johnson one, but 6 out of 6 million people, Ken, and I'm going to use, because you're a news guy in a news story, 6 out of 6 million clots. We don't even know if these people are dead, okay? And they cut the vaccine. Now, I have a theory on this. I'll get to it in a second. Ken, are you nervous? Would you, I mean, yes, what are your thoughts on it?
No, I'm not nervous, but I mean, things happen when you do that. That said, we just don't have the facts and evidence on this. So they got a small cluster of women, primarily between 18 and 49, where there was a half a dozen of them who had an antibody come up against that and create some blood clots. I believe it killed at least one person. So, look, unfortunately, this disease and other diseases recently have been politicized so much. It's like, if I know who you voted for, I know where you stand on certain drugs type of issue, which I just find bizarre in America. So, they probably figured, look, these people didn't get this until 2 weeks after. There was about that. So I think that they just wanted to say, let's hold it off for a few days, a few weeks, see if that increases. Are we going to get 50 more or 200 more tomorrow? I mean, look, the other one, the AstraZeneca, seems to have a similar thing going on. Now in Europe, where I think they dispensed about 38 million of those Seneca doses, they had a couple hundred people who had a similar clotting type of issue. And there was a similar science underlying the Johnson & Johnson and the Seneca one. So I'm not smart enough to know exactly what's going on. You've got a great conspiracy theory, so I'm sure that'll be more popular.
Oh, I will share my conspiracy theories and then get to Ben Stein on this. My conspiracy on this, so just so everybody knows, with the Johnson & Johnson. Now, I know a lot of the people that listen to the show are against the vaccination. I understand that. But one of the big conspiracy theories that I have right now is that Johnson & Johnson, Woody Johnson, who was the former ambassador under Trump to the United Kingdom, the CEO of Johnson & Johnson was one of the few people after Charlottesville that actually stayed with Trump and met him at his country club in Jersey. I have a feeling, and because the left has never known Ben Stein to be vindictive at all, that this is, call me conspiracy theorist, Judah, that this could be one of the reasons why Fauci and these disastrous people.
Now, wait a minute. What are you saying there? We lost the audio there.
You lost me?
You said Fauci and these something or other people.
I was trying. I don't want to get.
You didn't lose audio. Were you going blue on us?
Yeah, yes, I was going blue on you.
You're not on the radio, Judah. There's no standards here.
That's true. And these assholes, Ben
just
Stein,
demonetized.
We don't monetize, and these assholes, Ben Stein, have decided to punish Johnson & Johnson. I mean, why? I mean, that's who the left are.
Well, I'd say that's who all people are, and I can well imagine that being true. I can well imagine the punishment by the Democrat Party of people who are not for them. I can easily imagine that. I would say there were safeguards against such kind of personal misbehavior, but we learned during the Trump years that the FBI and the CIA and all these government law enforcement entities do not have any safeguards. In fact, they are the main revenge people and vengeance people in the whole country. So I imagine anything is possible in terms of vengeance and misbehavior towards people who do not toe the line. Anything's possible.
I have a question.
Leon raised a great question, Rob, and I'll get to you. He actually raised a great question that I thought about before I got it, right? Which was, shouldn't people get antibody tests beforehand to see if they had COVID, because then would they need the shot? And they're telling, and the answer to that is, for my best understanding, Leon, is that the antibody test could run out. The antibodies could run out. after a certain amount of time, so that test is not exactly accurate. And also that they are telling people that have had COVID to get the shot because of all the 60,000 million strains, Rob Kendall, that they're going to be reporting about for the next 6 years. Okay, there's going to be a new strand in Kenya.
So I ask this all the time on the air, and no one has a good answer for me. Look, I'm going to wait probably a year because I want to see what happens. I'm young, knock on wood, I'm a relatively healthy person. So to me, it's not of huge risk. That being said, I don't begrudge anyone who chooses to get this shot. Yet the same behavior doesn't seem to be reciprocated from people who don't want to respect my right to wait and see because of things like this. And I don't understand, if you're vaccinated and you're clear, what the hell do you care what I do? And why are people now, I've never heard people being obsessed with vaccinations like they are with this one, and I don't get it.
Your body,
Rob,
your
you should
choice.
get a shirt that says "My body, my choice." Sorry, sorry, Ken. Go.
No, that's exactly what I said. I said his body, his choice.
You see, great minds think alike.
Isn't that weird though?
Yeah. No. Well, listen. Listen. Here's the thing. If Ben Stein, if they said to everybody, "Get vaccinated," and we'll tell you to stop wearing these damn masks, I believe 89 most people would actually do it. And sorry.
I'd do almost anything to stop wearing the mask.
And in Michigan right now, it's so fascinating to me that states that have the strictest gun laws tend to have the most violence. States that have had some of the strictest laws on this COVID have had, like Michigan, they're threatening then another lockdown in Michigan. It's insane.
Yeah, well, I think, if I may say this, and again, as I've said a number of times, I am a doctor, but I am not a board-certified psychoanalyst. But I think the governor of that state is insane. And yes, there's a lot of deaths by untoward violent crimes in Michigan, and yet they seem to be very, very strict on vaccines, but not very strict on gun violence. So I don't know what to make of that, except, frankly, I'll stop being sarcastic. It's all politics. It's all money. There's a lot of black votes in Michigan. A lot of black people in Michigan have friends and relatives who are gang members or who are in prison. They do not want to do anything to upset those people or to punish those people or to have those people suffer any more than they're already suffering from being in prison and from being deprived of their right to go out and kill more people. So the governor does not want to upset those people, and nobody wants to upset those people, and so those people basically live day to day with complete freedom, and it has nothing to do with the vaccine. If it turned out that doing either before or against the vaccine would get more votes, they'd be for or against the vaccine. It's all a matter of that. And then, of course, from the votes come government titles, and then come lobbyist jobs, and then come speaking fees. And suddenly all of it gets transmogrified, as we used to say in ninth grade, into money and living in a nice big house with a swimming pool and a tennis court.
And there you are. That's the whole story. That's the whole story, according to Ben Stein. But Ken or Rob, I am one of those people. I get the flu shot. I'll tell you
why. Why do you do that to yourself?
I had a bad flu one year and I take it and it just eases my mind a little bit. I hate being sick, but I just want to tell you this. So I get these sunspots often on my face, and for years it's very painful. The doctor freezes them, and my dermatologist, great dermatologist, and when I always closed my eyes, Ken, because of the pain. And one day, and I heard a snap as he was doing it, and I got really nervous, and I said, "Oh my God, did it break?" And he goes, "Yeah, the Q-tip broke." And I had no idea because I never looked at what he was doing, but that it was just a Q-tip that was, but I never asked what he was doing. As he injected shots for my alopecia because he said that would help my hair grow back, it took me 3 years to find out it was cortisol that he was injecting. But I was willing to do it. That's just me. And my plan is that I'm going to laminate it. I'm going to wear a huge chain around my neck with the vaccination papers. And if you want to arrest me for not wearing a mask, go fuck yourself, okay? Because here's my vaccination papers laminated on
Wait, what
my
did that have
chest.
to do with the Q-tip and the shots in the head? What's going on here?
Because
gone off the tracks here a little bit.
I thought you were going to wear your alopecia around your neck.
my whole point was, is he said, why do I subject myself to that? Because I subject myself to anything that might get myself better, okay? If you told me it took, I had a cold and I had to like do something absolutely insane, Rob, I hate being sick, okay? There's your answer to that.
Whenever I go to the doctor for the yearly physical, it always tells you stuff that you're past due for. And I've never had a flu shot. So mine always says past due since December 31st, 1985, which is when I would have been 2 years old. So I always love seeing that on my chart.
Judah, you're under arrest.
It's really funny though, Rob, you raised a great point. I wish people would hear it. I wish everybody would hear it. It's this: your body, your choice. If you want to get vaccinated, do it. Don't scream at people. If you don't scream at them. Let people make that decision for themselves. And as conservatives, we really have to be authentic when who we are, because that is who we are as a party. That's how we decide things. But if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody in the YouTube chat. You may never talk to me again. But I want to remind everybody to download our podcast, The World According to Ben Stein. I want to remind everybody to get the email, benstein.substack.com. Great stuff. And also Ken LaCourte, of course, Media Action Network. You do amazing things. Tell people more about this petition, Ken, that's going around.
Well, the petition was a great idea from a great man who's in my upper left. We're not getting a whole lot of attention on it, to be perfectly frank at this point. We've got about 5,500 people who've signed up on this. We are trying to encourage former president, and to some people, still President Trump, to go to Georgia, to show up in Atlanta on the day of the All-Star game and hold a competing rally there, because we are all convinced, many of us, that he would have more people in his stadium and probably more eyeball watchers on it than the fly-by-night All-Star people and MLB, who is punishing a state because they took some modest action to stop voter fraud that the left decided was the equivalent of a modern-day Uncle Tom, because they can just say stuff and the entire press corps nods and writes it down.
You raise a great point, though, because I've said what's next, and now we have states, in the NCAA now, Ben, is threatening any state that has the trans laws, that dares question whether a man, with the bathrooms, they will hold tournament games from those states. And we're on a really slippery slope of it's absolutely crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. It's incredible. It's mind-boggling. It's absolutely incredible. That you've got to worry about. Are you kidding? This is crazy. I mean, this is a world where the Chinese are waging a genocide against some of the people in their own country, where the Russian leadership are literally killing people who question President Putin, where in South America there are countries that are openly admiring Adolf Hitler and modeling themselves after the Third Reich, and this is what we're worrying about. It's unbelievable.
No, we need a good war. Take out a certain slow-moving part of society here, and then we get our values straightened up again.
I've often said that's what this generation said. War sucks, and we should never have a war. But I come from a generation, and the generation is obviously after me, where we didn't have to worry about a lot of things. We had it amazingly well. We didn't have to do, what was it called, Ben? The tuck and roll. When you got under your
tuck and roll was a kind of upholstery, cool cars, a duck and cover. Tuck and roll was a kind of upholstery.
Oh, there you go. That's how far away from it was that I didn't know what duck and roll was.
Yeah.
And I had to learn about certain things, about how bad they were, from history. And thank God people.
You lucky fellow, have been in my company for the last many years, and that's how you've gotten to learn about that. Because I am a walking and talking, very overweight encyclopedia.
98% of it. I leave 2% to God. But Rob Kendall, you just came from a state where they held their tournament, and this is absolute. You know, when we talk about this insanity, and the reason it's really important because we don't speak up enough to people when they're saying this idiocy, and that's what I like about what Ken does with his Media Action Network. What I love about it, which is punching back at liberals. We have to start when people say to us these things. You have to look at them and say, "Are you out of your fucking minds?" Okay, as
too much.
Yeah,
I think one of the issues is being able to get control of the narrative, and now with all these people being deplatformed and not having a voice, that we're not able to get messaging out anymore. It's interesting. I'm a huge fan of the show To Catch a Predator that was on in the.
Who got caught being a predator, didn't he?
I was never caught, but I have had Chris
No.
on the show. He's a friend of the show. I love the show, you know, where they would catch these guys online.
Yeah, with Chris Hansen. I think
Yeah.
he got caught being a predator or something.
No, he had a little problem bouncing checks, I think. That was, yeah, he wasn't a predator. He
My bad.
problem paying his bills. Don't speak ill of friends of the Mock and Rob show. But anyway, you know, in the mid 2000s, they had this great show where they would catch these guys online, and they would, you know, have decoys that would get them to come to the house, and then he would come out and interview these guys for a television show, and law enforcement would get them.
Rob, everybody here has seen To Catch a Predator. Okay, it was
I haven't seen it.
It was great. It was a great show.
Okay.
So he's got this podcast now where it's called Predators I've Caught, and it's once a week. He picks one of the more famous guys that was on the show, and he does the behind the scenes of how they caught him. And this past week, he's talking about how when we were doing To Catch a Predator, we had basically like 3 forums to catch these guys in. You know, it was like MySpace, AOL, and Yahoo. That was
what kind of predators? I don't even know what you're talking about. What kind of predators?
He was talking about people that go after children online, and they like type in, they would, you know, they would message them and say, "I'll meet you here." And it was on the show, it was a police person was the decoy, and then they would go to the person.
Here, let's role play it. So I'll be the I'm a 55-year-old guy, like, "Hey, I'm a 16-year-old girl, and you're the kind of fun. What's going on? What's going on, Judah?" And then Judah would be like, "Hey, let's meet at the junior high at 6 o'clock."
Yeah, and bring condoms, and literally they were a certain amount of things they would have them bring Ben, so they wouldn't be able to say, "I wasn't going there for sex." So it was always like booze, condoms, and something else. And the craziest thing was there were people that made cameo appearances on this show that got busted twice. You know, they didn't learn from their first time of getting caught by it's Chris Hansen, right?
Chris Hansen, yeah.
Chris Hansen, they didn't learn once, they got busted Ben twice on the show. And it was usually like 10 or 11-year-old kids that they were going for, 12-year-old kids. So that's what Rob is talking about.
So I'm going somewhere with this because so he's got this show out now called podcast. It's called Predators I Caught, and he, you know, it's been 15 years now. He relives these people that they caught, the behind the scenes stuff on the guy. But he was talking about this the other day on the podcast. He said when we started that show 15 years ago, it was easier to catch these guys because there were like 3 forums where they all hung out. You know, Yahoo, AOL, and MySpace. He said now there's still kind of some of these shows out to do these things, but these predators are everywhere because there's so many different platforms in which they communicate that it's a lot harder for law enforcement to catch these guys. And I think it applies here that it's so hard for conservatives now that they're getting deplatformed, they're taken down, they're getting demonetized, all these things to get our message out. And I think that's just a gigantic disadvantage now that talk radio it is still a dominant force, but not the super dominant force of communication that it once was.
Did you just call conservatives sex offenders?
I did not. Sex offenders.
Somehow,
by the way, somebody brought something
up. The little child lovers to conservatives, and they're like the same guys.
I don't get the whole thing. I am a parent. I am a parent of a kid who was, at a certain point, about 20 years ago or 22 years ago, an 11 or 12-year-old. It was a hell of a lot of trouble cleaning up after him, feeding him, finding the right toys for him, finding the right cartoons for him. Why the heck would anyone want to go to all that trouble? What's What's the point of it? It's a lot of work. I mean, every bit of it I could possibly give to his nurse, I would give to her. I mean, I want to just lie in my room and hide. What's the point? Is it to have sex with little kids? These people must be crazy.
Yes, that was the whole point, Ben. And they would have a police decoy playing the kid in the chat room because kids, listen, kids, I hate to say this, TikTok had to shut, I think it was one of these apps had to shut something down because people were showing people how to hang themselves.
Oh my
And a couple of weeks ago, a kid died. I mean, you had it with the Tide Pods. You have this all the time. But somebody brought something up really, and I want you to get to it, Ken, because you brought this up on your site today, something with Project Veritas, which is an extremely important thing they do. And did you report on something about Project Veritas?
Yeah, and we actually are encouraging people to read this. In tomorrow morning's newsletter, you'll get it. You can share it around. You know, James O'Keefe did another good one. He got a CNN, the guy was kind of a tech guy, was called a technical director, which means he's usually in the, he's usually the guy calling for video shots inside of a control room. Depends a little bit depending on the country, on the company. Anyhow, the Project Veritas got an undercover person to talk to him, and he said everything we would say about CNN. He's like, our entire goal was to get rid of Trump. Trump probably would have gotten reelected if it wasn't for us. Here's the way that we would show Joe Biden jogging or looking cool with his sunglasses, and tried to make him a virile, not senile. And yet when Trump had a shaky hand, we'd spend a day on that. I mean, he basically kind of belied the notion that they're true journalists there. And it was like we were talking about it. So, of course, that gets popped up, and you know, you get demonetized and deplatformed and all that. James O'Keefe is doing great work with his undercover stuff still.
Okay.
It's yeoman's.
You guys have educated me, and I am grateful about this. I have to say, the whole idea of wanting to actually exert yourself to have to be around young kids is just incredible to me. But there's a lot of crazy people out there.
And amazingly, Ben, it's a huge thing, and sadly, it's a huge thing. But you know what? The media are nothing but predators too. They prey on people.
Very good. That's very good.
And there should be a show called To Catch a Predator, which news edition, which would and you'd have a lot of them that prey on us, that prey on our fears, that prey on our insecurities, that are miserable humans, and not all.
We have to get together and live stream us watching To Catch a Predator with Ben. We have to do this.
That would be actually a very. I love how you're stuck on this, Rob. So you consider two great friends of your show, Donald Trump and Chris Hansen.
That's right.
Catch a Predator. I think that's amazing, but we are running out of time. I want to get into the solution of everything because we are on a crossroads. And Ken, I always think you have the best solution. Ben, of course, is just saying to people when they say this stuff to us, shut up. What's your point? You don't even have to say shut up. What's your point? You know, does this bring you joy? You know, we have to fight back, and I mean verbally sometimes, with these psychos on the left. And if they, I just think, Ken, it's really important.
I think it's really important. Ken or Ben, I'm sorry, beg your pardon.
What's your point?
Ken.
What's
You're right. You're right.
I want to hear what Ben has to say.
What I want to say is, if I hear leftist people saying things that are just plain ridiculous and so crazy that I can't even start to get at them, I think to myself, I'm an old man. I don't have that many years left to live. I want to spend most of them, as much of them as possible, with my wife. God happens to have gifted me with the most wonderful wife in the world, on this planet, that there ever was. I don't want to have to spend my time arguing with leftist lunatics, except that late at night, my wife goes to sleep while reading mystery stories. I go to my office and I write, try to make the tiniest impression on people of good sense about what's right, what's real, and what is not. You know what? The princess and we all decide what's right and what is not. It doesn't matter except beside the gates of Eden. Bob Dylan said that. We work at it all the time. We're working on it beside the gates of Eden.
Perfectly said. And for the record, the only reason I used bad language tonight was because Ben Stein tempted me and dared me into doing it. I normally do not curse. Everybody that knows me knows that.
Did your mom text you?
Everybody no, she didn't. But I could see her doing that. That would be pretty funny. As she's on her treadmill. I could reading the court news. I could see her doing that.
Good.
But I want to thank everybody that's been in the YouTube chat. We thank everybody, and I want to remind everybody because it was so important. The biggest takeaway I get, obviously, is everything Ben said. Obviously, everything Ken said. But Rob, you raised a great point. Basically, of your body, your choice. If you choose to get this, if you don't, that's what we are in America for. That we have that choice, and we have to treat ourselves, even as conservatives. We can't fight on these things. If somebody wants to get a vaccine, let them get a vaccine, and don't call them a traitor or whatever the hell you want to call them. Just go with it. And I want to remind everybody: download the podcast, give us a 5-star review. Ken LaCourte, tell people all the places they could find you.
The only place you should go is MediaActionNetwork.com, and you can sign up to our newsletter there. It's at the top of the page.
No, not yet. Rob Kendall, 93.1 IBC.
Yes, weekdays, 93.1 WIBC, WIBC.com. We are working on getting Ben Stein on the show. There's a 3-hour time difference. I know Ben is.
Wait a minute. So what time would that be my time?
Well, that'd be 9 to noon, but I'm working with Judah to go work around your schedule. I'm willing to stay late to interview you so we can get back to
I like that attitude.
He's willing to stay till 9:30 Pacific time AM. I'm kidding, Ben. He's willing to stay later in the day. And of course, you can find Ben Stein at spectator.org and on Parler, at Parler, and everybody at Ben Stein, and everybody get back on Parler. Just do it. Get back on Parler. It's important. Ben Stein, close us out with song.
And so we sang the chorus from Atlanta to the sea while we were marching through Georgia. Hurrah, hurrah, we bring the Jubilee. Hurrah, hurrah, the flag that makes you free. And so we sang the chorus from Atlanta to the sea while we were marching through Georgia.
God bless you all. Have a great night. We will see you. We will see you Thursday night. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night, guys. Thank you as always. Bye-bye.
God bless you all.